Hello, welcome to the MSU Turf Team Update. My name is Kevin Frank. Today is July 7th, 2020. And once again, we have Dr. Jeff Andresen with us to provide hopefully some relief from this hot weather that we've all been kind of suffering through in the last week or so. So Jeff, feel free, give us some insight on what to expect.
We will, and I guess the operative one word it would be warm, and you'll see that theme here as well. But water is becoming obviously more and more an important issue here as we go on to with time, and I'll get to that here in just a moment. Looking at the last week, though, not a big surprise to anyone. Warm and what maybe call it hot and dry. Our mean temperatures for the month or for the week here, sorry, generally from 6 to 10 degrees above the long-term normals, and the departures were greater as you went north. You can see that here in the map. There's some areas of upper Michigan that were way up even 11, 12 degrees above normal. So much above what it typically is for the first week of July. And just as importantly here, looking at our precipitation, while there was some meaningful precipitation across portions of the Upper Peninsula, notably last evening across central portions of Upper Michigan, you can see that here some areas got picked up over more than 2 inches for the week, but the vast majority of the Lower Peninsula, as well as much of our neighboring states here, little or nothing. There have been some scattered ice, or we even call it isolated showers. You can see those here scattered, some in the southwestern Lower Peninsula. There were some in the Ann Arbor area last night, but those were, if you were lucky enough to be under one of those clouds, again, you should consider yourself very, very fortunate. Most areas receive no rainfall. My house here in Hazlet, I'm working on, this is day 8 with no precipitation. And if we go back before that, there weren't a whole lot of wet days in the prior 2 weeks to that. Now I'll show you a graphic for that in just a second. Our degree day totals in response to the very warm week have surged ahead. And now most areas here are several days ahead, calendar days ahead of the long-term averages. That's definitely the case across almost all of Lower Michigan. It's even a little bit further ahead, or greater departure ahead in the Upper Peninsula here. Some cases more than 1 week now ahead of normal. That's a lot of that has to do with those big departures we saw last week. I mentioned precipitation, several ideas or angles on that. The top one here, this is 30-day precipitation expressed as a percent of normal. And you can see that, again, for Upper Michigan, especially the central portion of the Upper Peninsula here, we've actually been at or above normal, but that is the exception over much of Lower Michigan. And again, in areas to our south, you can see generally 50 to 75% of normal. If you converted those in, or actually looked at actual units there, for most of the state, we're talking about departures right now for the last month of about 1 to 2 inches. Some areas were approaching 3 inches. That would be on the high end. But given that it's in the middle of the growing season, and given the very high evaporative demand that we've seen here recently, again, it has led to a rapid depletion of reserves in the soil moisture. On the lower panel here, we've got the latest U.S. drought monitor, and you can see that there are areas of the Midwest that have recently been put into the D0 or abnormally dry category, including very extreme southeastern portions of Lower Michigan, and now for the first time also extreme western or northwestern portions of Upper Michigan, including portions of the Keweenaw. I would predict is that this week's issue, this later on this week, we probably will see expansion of this in Michigan. I'd be actually expecting that. We'll see how that works out. But over here in the lower right, one more index. This is the evaporative demand drought index, or EDDI as it's known as. And again, we've seen actually quite a change here. A lot of the Lower Peninsula now into the second drought category, meaning it's up into the driest 10% for this time of the year. So again, things have changed rapidly, and a lot of it has to do with the very sunny, warm temperatures and high evaporative demand, but all collectively, all these together with the lack of precipitation has led to, again, a rapidly changing situation. Well, looking at our ahead here in our forecast, the positive news is we do have a better chance for rainfall here later on this afternoon into this evening. We've got a frontal boundary. This is a weather map forecast set up for 2 p.m. this afternoon, and you can see this cold front making its way south and east. It's not moving very fast, but it is a change. There's a little bit of moisture for this system to work with, and so we will see in the next couple of hours here. I would anticipate by the middle of the afternoon we'll start to see convection bubble, especially across central and in southern portions of lower Michigan, and continue on into the evening before it dissipates. It is not going to be, though, widespread rain, unfortunately, which is what certainly is needed. It will be more on a scattered level, and so most places we're talking maybe a 40 or 50% chance. Although, again, given where the last 1 to 2 weeks have been, it's one of the larger chances we've had for precipitation in some time. But that's the first chance. When by the time we look here tomorrow, you can see the front hasn't even made it through the state. It basically slows down and stalls. And then there's another weather system off here out of the northern Great Plains. That's the next weather system to impact us overnight, Thursday, Friday, and into the day Friday. And that, I think, is even a little bit better chance for more widespread rainfall. For most of the state after today, Wednesday will be dry, Thursday will be dry, and both those days are going to be hot. I suspect temperature-wise, those will be the peak of our current heat wave here with 90-degree plus high temperatures, especially on Thursday, probably mid-90s in many locations. But here on Thursday, you can see as that system approaches, we have an area of showers and thunderstorms develop out ahead of it. The frontal boundary that was over Michigan returns northward as a warm front and brings, again, warm and very, very humid, or let's call it hot and humid conditions back into Michigan. And that, again, sets the stage for probably our best chance for rainfall in much of the next week. And even that, again, will not be probably covering everybody, but we should get a lot of areas that pick up at least 1/4 of an inch with that during the day on Friday. Now, finally, after this frontal boundary you see out here makes its way through the state here on Friday, we will see slightly cooler conditions. It's a cold front, but it's not the air on the other side of it's not a whole lot different than what it is ahead. So our temperatures will drop back into the 80s for highs instead of the 90s. So a little bit of a difference. Low still in the 60s, but the bottom line after that is look once again for the upper air pattern that we've been stuck in here for a while to return next week. So a return back to hot weather probably by early to middle part of next week. High temperatures above 90 once again possible. Precipitation totals for the next week. Again, I mentioned tonight or later on today, and then Friday are our primary chances of precipitation. But you can see most areas generally somewhere on the order 1/4 to 1/2 an inch. And a little bit higher than that for southeastern portions of the lower peninsula, and then maybe extreme western upper Michigan. But we, again, the rainfall that we're going to get, it really is needed, but it's not going to be enough to change or dramatically alter the dry, especially dry topsoils that we currently have. And so some of it's going to be good fortune. If you are under one of the showers of thunderstorms, you'll be better off. There will be areas, unfortunately, that will be missed or largely missed by the rainfall of the next couple days. There will be a lingering chance, I should mention, of some showers and thunderstorms this weekend, primarily across southern parts of the state. But as this has been the case here recently, they will not expected to be widespread and not enough to really totally end the dryness or the lack of precipitation we've had recently. Our potential evapotranspiration, the reference values here for the upcoming week, generally in on the order of about 1.3 to 1.5 inches. So I guess the good news is it's less than it has been this last week and then the week before that, but it's still pretty high. So most areas, again, around 0.2 of an inch. That's midsummer and very, very high. Well, large values, not quite those extreme as what we have been experiencing here recently over the last week or two. So a little bit better, but still a lot of potential water demand if the water were available. And then in the medium range forecast guidance, it's a little bit of a broken record. going to start here in the lower left, or the left side here, with this big broad ridging feature across North America, and that has been the culprit. That's why we are seeing the heat now. It's for a lot of the last few weeks, trough out over the West Coast, and another one over the east with again with the ridge in the middle. And so that's a very, very strong likelihood of continuation of above normal temperatures. You can see that in the upper right here. Mean temperatures in this case 80% that's about as high as you ever see on one of these medium range forecast guidance maps. 6 to 10 day outlook is almost identical to this. You can see large portions, almost all of the Midwest, forecast to be warmer than normal. The precip, and like we saw this last week, and it's a little bit more of a difficult forecast, because Michigan is right along this gradient here, where to the north we see more of an active storm track, or the storm track will be confined and mostly over southern Canada, but it's close enough to have more frequent chances of precipitation. You can see that there's actually some areas of wetter than normal conditions over far northern parts of the region, including the Upper Peninsula, but then just across southern Michigan and large areas of the Midwest and the east, you can see drier than normal conditions. So Michigan's right on that, and probably expected to stay there for the next couple of weeks. So this again, this pattern keeps repeating itself with a little bit of a break here this weekend. We'll probably be back to the same place by the middle part of next week. And just to, I guess, reinforce that, the 3 to 4 week outlook, which really looks at the last 2 weeks of July, is also calling pretty much for the same conditions. And this is the map for mean temperatures here. The departures, it's for the entire lower 48 is forecast to be warmer than normal. That's something you don't see very often. And also, unfortunately, drier than normal conditions across a large portion of the central continental U.S., including Michigan. So warmer and drier is definitely the direction here of all of our guidance in the short term, and also even into the medium range and even longer. July, certainly at this point in time, high likelihood that we will end up warmer and drier than normal, even though we've only put 1 week of the month behind us. So summarizing here, again, heat wave conditions expected to continue for another couple of days, probably peaking on Thursday, but after that, then we will see a little bit of a break. The greatest chances for any significant rainfall later this afternoon and this evening, and then again, late Thursday into Friday. But I guess the caveat to that is it will not solve the problems that we've run into here recently. Some areas will be fortunate and pick up more, but it's not expected to be widespread and drought ending or dryness ending type of event. And then by the middle of next week, given the medium range, we will be back up to much above normal levels for much of next week, and then maybe even beyond. And the outlook also, unfortunately, suggests drier than normal conditions. So this, add water. If you've got irrigation, it's going to come in really, really handy and be it's going to be very, very important here over the next few weeks, because more of the same is expected. And I'll finish up or complete here and see if you have any questions. Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you, Jeff. I know we had a couple of questions that had come in. I think one's already been answered. Somebody was looking for kind of the second half of summer, of whether it was going to be cooler, and at least through July, it doesn't appear that way.
Right, that's right. And even going beyond that, the official outlooks, they also are calling. And, it's interesting, these long lead outlooks have been calling for warmer than normal summer conditions, and even into the fall for the last few months. So that at least they appeared to be on the mark for that, and for better or for worse, but that's been consistent, and that includes even into the first part of the fall.
Now, if we can dream a little bit, any thoughts on winter?
Well, it's a long way out, and last time I mentioned with our new outlook last week, there is a hint of a formation of a La Nina or a cool event out in the equatorial Pacific, and we'll see. There's probably 50-50 odds on that, whether it develops or it's strong enough to have an influence on our weather. But if it does, and we do have, and some of the forecast models do call for that this fall, if we do have La Nina conditions, we tend to see more wintry conditions during the winter. However, at this point in time, our our outlook officially, there's no direction on, or no forecast direction on mean temperatures, which would be equal chances of below, near, and above. But it does call for wetter than normal conditions. And many La Nina winters in Michigan turn out to be snowier than normal because we do have above normal precip. So that's at least a glimpse right now, but it very well could, and it likely will change between now and then. But I think the La Nina is something to keep an eye on, because that would typically have the most influence out of all these tools on what's envisioned here for the winter season.
Well, we'll certainly keep an eye on that as we not like we're trying to get rid of summer this quick. But I know one thing. I'm always interested in your weekly ET rates. Look like you're about 1.5 inches maybe for this next week. That's one thing I think a lot of people lose track of a little bit, especially if you're just irrigating your lawn. Some people have automatic in-ground systems, and typically like bluegrass lawns, a lot of times will cite like 80% ET return, and that'd be over 1 inch now for a week.
Yeah.
And then, of course, some of our golf course putting greens that are promoted primarily to annual bluegrass, which tends to be a little bit shorter root system in general than creeping bent grass, and they might be close to returning 100% throughout a week. So kind of the frequency amount of water going out, just trying to keep up, is certainly a challenge this time of year. And I think I'll have an article I'll get out this week through MSUE News. People will be able to look at just on different types of, whether it's lawns or golf courses, and what to be aware of as we go through this. Because I know there's a lot of stress turf out there right now, and people are just having a hard time keeping up with this level of heat and dryness that we've experienced now.
It is, as I've mentioned, if we lived in the Southwest or the Western U.S., this would be relatively, well, certainly more normal. But in Michigan, we just typically don't see these long stretches of this hot, dry weather like we've had here, and so it is unusual. And it puts, again, on a practical sense, it puts a strain on getting water. A lot of people have irrigation, but it's sometimes it's not as designed or engineered to use like we were in Southern California. So it's a test on the systems, and as you saw in the forecast, probably unfortunately more to come in the next couple of weeks.
I think we talk about this a lot in the turf industry. Our irrigation systems perform wonderfully when Mother Nature covers them up a little bit. When the rainfall quits, all of a sudden we find out where the gaps are, where the inefficiencies are, and it becomes very apparent quickly.
And we certainly have a lot of the state anyway. We've seen not much help from Mother Nature here recently. It's been the opposite in terms of water.
Absolutely. Well, thank you once again, Jeff, and we'll try to make it through this heat spell and try to enjoy the warmth, I guess, if we can. But it's going to be tough.
Yep.
Thanks for the update. We appreciate it.
You bet. Thanks, Scott.